Hello everyone, my name is Leslie and this is Spleensplaining. Today we are tackling the top 15 most common cognitive distortions. What they are, what we can do about it, the deeper cause behind distorted habits of thinking, and stay tuned to the end because I'm really going to describe how tackling cognitive distortions is one of the most critical things we can do if we really want to learn how to manifest. So, what are cognitive distortions? To put it really simply, they are negatively biased patterns of thinking. If you're human, you have fallen prey to cognitive distortions, probably quite often. I mean, many of us have one or more or a few of these that regularly filter the way that we think. Before we start on the path of deconditioning in human design, the not self is totally running our lives. Ever since we've formed the ability to have thoughts, the not self mind has been willy-nilly and often falsely coming up with justifications, explanations, rationalizations for what we experience. Life is a perpetual confrontation with the unknown. And this uncertain, unknown, mysterious nature of existence is really challenging for the not self mind. It feels threatened. Our autonomic nervous system gets pinged. That's our fight, flight, freeze response. Then we immediately begin grasping at certainty to try to cope with this. We want to allay the unpleasantness of fear, confusion, embarrassment, shock that all of this uncertainty brings up in us. But we begin to see a problem because craving that certainty, always wanting to jump to make the uncomfortability go away, it leaves us in a situation where we're grasping for the first available rationalization rather than seeking to know the truth. So no matter how faulty, what lack of evidence we have, we're going to go with what our brain comes up with on the fly to explain what's going on. And really to make the uncomfortable feelings of not knowing what's going on go away as quickly as possible. You know, this can really compound on top of itself because we like that certainty. We want to build up these walls of defenses around it. And as we continue to have that uncomfortable confrontation with the truth and the facts of reality, our mind is just scrambling to hold those false narratives together and really digging deeper in those grooves of those lies in order to maintain this whole structure. You can see this dynamic at play in each and every one of these 15 cognitive distortions that I'm going to talk about. If your environment growing up was particularly chaotic, it's likely that you do carry a lot of these distortions. You are not to blame. I really want you to extend a lot of compassion to yourself and know that this is easily shiftable. Follow your strategy and authority. Do that deconditioning process to take away the reins from the not self mind and put it in your true seat of power. So without further ado, here are the top 15 most common cognitive distortions. Number 1, all or nothing thinking. There are good people and bad people. You're either with me or you're against me. There is no nuance. There is no room in this kind of thinking for the middle ground, the gray areas in life. There's no room for viewing yourself as generally a successful person who makes a mistake every now and then. Nope, it's black or white, all or nothing thinking. Number 2 is mental filtering. You know that old adage where if you get a new haircut and 10 people can give you a compliment, but the 11th person says it looks interesting? You're going to focus on that negative or neutral feedback and exclude all of the positive that you just heard. This is mental filtering. We're disregarding everything positive about a situation and we're dwelling in the negative. Number 3 is overgeneralization. If your thoughts include phrases like always and never, it's a good chance that you are in overgeneralization. So this can look like, everybody always wants something from me. Do they? Nobody ever supports me. Is that true 100% of the time? Or are you overgeneralizing? Number 4 is discounting the positive. It's a lot like mental filtering, but it is actively dismissing the positives to a situation. So these thoughts can look a lot like, oh, they're just being nice. They're probably just trying to be polite. So you're receiving positive feedback, but you're finding a way to dismiss it. Number 5 is jumping to conclusions. So you make quick assumptions about the situation, and then you react to your assumptions without a whole lot of evidence. This is also known as mind reading or predicting the future. where you are assuming you know what the other person is thinking, or you're assuming what's going to happen in the future based off of this faulty conclusion that you've jumped to without much evidence. This can look like, oh, he seems moody, he must be mad at me. Or, I haven't heard back from them yet, I'm probably not going to get the job. Number 6 is catastrophizing. It's like an extreme form of jumping to conclusions where you imagine the most horrible outcomes. So that can be, I just know this mistake is going to cost me my job. Wow, my partner isn't usually late. It's raining. I bet they died in a car accident. Catastrophizing is going to the worst possible scenario. Number 7 is personalization. This is feeling overly responsible for events and other people's feelings, even if it has little or nothing to do with you. It can also look like feeling personally attacked if somebody expresses a belief that's just different from yours. So this can look like, if I tried harder, then my partner would be happy. Their happiness is up to them. It's not up to you. But in personalization, we make that our fault. Or how about, well, she never lets her kids watch more than a few hours of TV, and I let my kids watch more, so she thinks I'm a bad mom. Number 8 is control fallacies. So this can go to either extreme. We can either feel like we are hapless victims of circumstance and we have no control over our lives, or this can look like thinking we can control things that are really, honestly, outside of our control. When we think we're in control of everything, it looks a lot like personalization. Like, oh, I shouldn't be so needy. That's why he's unhappy. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, it looks like she made me feel bad about myself, so now I can't go to dinner, right? We're in control of our lives, and we can make the decisions we want to make, regardless of what people say to us. Number 9 is the fallacy of fairness. This is expecting life and people to ascribe to your idea of what's fair. So my roommate leaves dishes in the sink. She obviously has no respect for me. So you think it's fair that everybody should carry their equal weight. And understand, it doesn't matter so much whether or not these things are true, because so often in life, we have to choose between being right and being happy. We can't control the other person. Getting out of cognitive distortions helps us be happier and freer because we're not building up expectations just to be disappointed. And it's not about not confronting your roommate if you think what they're doing is unfair, but it's about staying out of that thinking that assigns meaning to people's actions and creates unnecessary drama inside of ourselves, when the reality is we don't have to get caught thinking that way. It's a disempowering way of thinking, and either you're going to accept it or you're going to address it, but making these assumptions and just going along with the resentment is a recipe for disaster. So the next one is number 10, and that is blaming. So it's not taking responsibility for the way we feel or act. It's always somebody else's fault. My mother never supported me, so there's no way that I can advocate for myself now. Right? And getting over this cognitive distortion doesn't mean we have to excuse what people have done to us. We are victims, often in our life, of other people's behavior. But at the end of the day, if you want to take back the reins of your own life, you're going to have to start taking responsibility for what you do moving forward. Number 11 is thinking in shoulds. So this is a huge one where we build up expectations for reality again, only to be disappointed and resentful. This is really that things should be a certain way with no exceptions. Like, I should work out every day. Well, that would be great. That would be ideal. But you don't want to set yourself up for unrealistic expectations. You don't want to do that with other people either. Like, if my partner really loved me, they should never get upset with me. Thinking in shoulds is another one of those black and white, this is the way it should be, and if it's not that way, then that's going to knock me out of a state of peace. It's unnecessary expectation and unnecessary suffering. Number 12 is emotional reasoning. I feel it, so it has to be true. For example, I'm feeling insecure, my partner has to be cheating on me. I just know it. Oh, I felt off this morning. I know something bad is going to happen. We're assigning all this made-up significance to our feelings and assuming it to be true. The 13th most common cognitive distortion is the fallacy of change. You think, if only this person in my life would change A, B, or C, then this would happen. If only this, that, or the other about my reality would change, and then. So it's not the same as expressing needs in a relationship and addressing people's behaviors, but you are conditioning your happiness, your feeling of worth, whatever it is, on some outside factor that's beyond your control. We might think, well, if my friends would put in more effort, then I wouldn't feel so lonely. You're feeling lonely, there's a lot you can do about that, and making it depend on the efforts and actions of your friends is a lot more risky than trying to deal with that loneliness in a proactive way. Number 14 is labeling. It's taking a singular act or quality of a person or an event and painting the entire person or event with that brush. She lied to me. She's a total liar, right? Or he's late sending that email. He's totally incompetent. We are acting as if this one thing that a person does or says means they're totally that thing. It's not accepting that we're all humans. We all have good qualities, bad qualities, better behaviors, not so great behaviors. It doesn't make us any one thing. We're different day to day. Number 15, the last but certainly not the least, is always being right. So we take our opinions as fact, and we care more about being right than being happy or other people's feelings. We get to a place where we refuse to look at any evidence to the contrary of what we believe. We're always trying to convince everyone. We can be so obsessed with proving our point. I talked earlier about the mind craving certainty, and the need to always be right is like an extreme aversion to uncertainty, an extreme addiction to knowing for certain, because it gives us feelings of being in control, feeling powerful. And so that certainty, even if it's a false certainty, or even if being right has negative consequences for us in our insistence that we're right and someone else is wrong, we want that feeling of power and control more than anything else. So I hope with all of these cognitive distortions, you can see how the mind is grasping at certainty. It's not about understanding. It's not about being curious or open. It's about quickly packing in that uncomfortable gap in knowing with an explanation, regardless of whether it's right, true, appropriate to the context, takes into consideration all the facts or not. So when we're operating in reaction to that gap, what we're really doing is operating out of a lack mentality. We feel this lack of information and we're responding to that. So that's why all these cognitive distortions skew so negative, is because they're coming out of a lack mentality. And this is where manifestation comes in. This is why it is critical to get on top of these cognitive distortions if you want to really up your manifestation game. We want to operate from a place of abundance, not lack mentality. Becoming comfortable with the unknown is the best way to attract those attitudes and those states of being that magnetize you to abundance, because you're open and receptive. If you're closing that gap so quickly, you're literally limiting life's opportunities for you, and you're not trusting in life. Manifesting takes being open to receive, it takes being open to possibility, and it takes a trust that things are coming to you. We don't have to grasp for certainty and know all how it's gonna go. We can be surprised by life and let it come to us and see what happens. If you invest in your own peace, you're gonna care a whole lot less about having to know exactly what's going on. You'll just be chilling. And the more you invest in that calm, well-regulated nervous system when you're not activated, you're gonna have so many more inner resources to draw upon, so you can spot those thoughts and transmute them into qualities and thoughts and states that just attract all of the abundance towards you. So what do we do about these cognitive distortions? I will say, especially at first, it's really hard to catch these while it's happening, when you're activated, right? I talked in the very beginning, this is about the activation of our sympathetic nervous system. We're in fight, flight, freeze. Something feels threatening to us. And usually it is just that lack of certainty, but we do interpret it as a threat. And so when our nervous system is activated, we are limited in our thinking. We're also limited in our ability to spot that thinking. It's generally better to get some distance to process some of that emotion. It's a lot easier to spot a feeling of uncomfortability, being triggered, being activated, anger, these emotions rising. If we find that we're in an activated state, we can move, leave the situation, go for a walk, deep breathing, tapping, do things to move these feelings through you. And then when you get some distance from the situation, you're better able to reflect on what just happened and to look at the kinds of thoughts that came up and question, is that true? What is the evidence that that's true? Is there evidence that that is not true? And really question yourself. if these are habitual ways of thinking, it might be a good idea, and a lot of spiritual teachings actually advise this, especially in like Hermeticism, to carve out a little bit of time every evening to reflect on your day. Think about any significant interactions that you had or any feelings of activation, and where did that lead you in your thinking? Like, I had a situation with a student who has a little bit of this defiant attitude, and they were threatening my authority in the classroom. At least that's what I felt. I found myself falling into a lot of these. Labeling, he's a bad student. He always challenges me. Overgeneralization. So there were plenty of distortions in this one example, but when I was going through the experience and verbally processing with a friend, I wasn't really able to reflect on the thoughts that I was having. And I needed to just get it all out, move myself through the agitation, move myself from an activated place into a greater state of calm. And from there, I was really able to see, aha, aha, aha. There are so many ways that sure, this person is a challenge, but it's not about this other person. It's not about what they're doing. It's what I need to learn. It's me needing to see where I'm distorted so that I can reclaim my power in the situation, work through my distortions, take ownership for my side of the road. I'm not going to change this other person. I'm not going to be able to affect his behavior. All I have control over is me. And I can tell you, just in clearing out my distorted thoughts, I was able to come back the next day and we had a lovely time together because I wasn't caught up in these distorted patterns of thinking that were limiting my options and limiting the other person because I'm already assuming how they're going to be. So I'm already reacting to them in a certain way, right? It gave me flexibility and openness to be surprised by their behavior. I had to get to a place where I'm like, you know what? Let's see how the next class goes. It could be better. If I'm stuck in cognitive distortion, I know it won't be better. I know it's going to be unpleasant. He's going to do this, he's going to do that, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm predicting the future. I'm jumping to conclusions. I am trapped in a very limited vision of this whole dynamic. But working through that, clearing that out of the way, I cleared the slate. I was open for things to change, for things to get better, and they instantly did. That's how we manifest, by clearing out the blockages and the constrictions of cognitive distortions. And ultimately, guys, this is about our peace. We want true feelings of safety. We want true feelings of being okay. We don't want these false, cobbled together assumptions that give us a feeling of power, control, and certainty when that's not really the case. We want the real deal. So I encourage you, start to do this. I've got all the distortions down in the notes. Take a look at those. Familiarize yourself. See if you can spot any of these distortions in your own thinking and work to question that. Create that flexibility. Invest in your peace regularly through movement. All of the activities that I've been talking about in previous episodes, anything you can do to invest in your parasympathetic nervous system, rest, digest, versus that sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, freeze. It's a battle of which part of our nervous system is going to win. And let me tell you, the ammunition from all around is heavy, trying to get us triggered, trying to get us activated, trying to knock us off the course of our peace and the path of our truth. So I am here to serve you on this journey. Get at me in the comments if you have any questions or things that you would love for me to address. Please like, share, subscribe, whatever you can do to further this channel and get this knowledge out there. I wish you a wonderful deconditioning journey until we meet again. Thanks.